Chapter 7. When Zhou Yunsheng arrived, Kalma-kun was sitting on the sofa, drinking red wine. The room was only lit by a dim table lamp. The light and shadows made his handsome facial features seem more profound. "Come and have a drink." He waved the youth over with his deep voice. His voice deep. Red Burgundy wine, 1997. Zhou Yunsheng's nose twitched as he walked over. He raised the glass and sipped. He had a very elegant drinking posture, like a real aristocrat, making Kalma-kun feel quite surprised. "I only want you to stay with me for 3 months. Name your price." He gave a satirical smile as he drained the remaining wine in one breath. There was nothing in this world money couldn't buy. Just like good wine, just like a beauty. Zhou Yunsheng almost wanted to pour the wine out on his head, but he held back. He looked down for a moment, pretending to think, then said in a low voice, "I want 300,000. "You sure?" Kalma-kun couldn't help but question. He had already prepared himself to hear an astronomical price from the boy, and the result was the boy only wanted 300,000. Couldn't even buy a decent watch. That couldn't even buy a decent watch. "It can't be less. I have to get 300,000. Zhou Yunsheng misunderstood his thoughts and once again stressed. Kalma-kun looked at him deeply, then propped his forehead on his hand and laughed. "Well, 300,000 it is, but I first have to inspect." "Inspect what?" Zhou Yunsheng was still ignorant when he found himself being carried on top of the man's shoulder and thrown onto a big bed in the neighboring room. He fell dizzily, then was pushed down by a strong body, and his lips were occupied by another's, sucking. A familiar feeling of vertigo instantly made him lose his mind. After a few minutes, the man finally opened the distance between them, but still erratically licked the young man's red and wet lips. He laughed lightly. "Baby, you're so much sweeter than I'd imagined." "Are you finished inspecting?" Zhou Yunsheng panted as he asked. "How's that possible? It's an inspection, of course. I have to thoroughly examine inside and out." The man's big hands suggestively kneaded the younger man's butt. "Wait, look into my eyes first." Zhou Yunsheng quickly cupped the man's cheeks, forcing him to look into his bottomless pupils. His voice lowered. His tone seemed particularly soothing. "Tell me, what do you see?" Kalma-kun involuntarily stared into his pupils. His expression gradually turned absent-minded. "Tell me, what do you see?" Zhou Yunsheng waited for him to speak for a long time, then asked again. "I see a star ocean." Even Kalma-kun's voice became absent-minded. "Very good. Now step away and masturbate." Zhou Yunsheng gave a satisfied smile, like a queen. He pushed aside the taller and stronger man who was pushing him down. This was a skill he'd learned through a reincarnation, hypnosis. In that reincarnation, he was a psychologist. He relied on this marvelous hypnosis skill to trick the heroine. The result was not only was he deceived by the heroine, he was killed 10,000 times by the hero. He couldn't bear to recall the past, but in short, this was an essential cheat skill for murder, arson, and swindling. He relied on it to complete many impossible tasks. But Kalma-kun's absent-mindedness only lasted for a short moment. When the young man broke out of his embrace and was about to get out of bed, he instantly sobered up, then gave a sneer. "Baby, what did you just say? Say it again." Zhou Yunsheng, who was half into his sweater, was completely stupefied. After he could react, he said tentatively, I said you should masturbate. Masturbating is enough. You'd certainly be happier than being with me. Try it out. You'll understand." Kalma-kun was both angry and amused. He dragged the younger man back onto the bed. easily stripped off his sweater and shirt and covered him. His voice hoarse. Baby, how can masturbating make me happier than fucking you? I don't need you to try it to know. After saying this, he used his hard giant to push against the boy's soft belly. Jiansheng wanted to squirm out of his embrace, but he pulled him back by his ankle. His pants were stripped off in one move, and he was pressed into the soft bedding, stark naked. An hour later, the two had satiated expressions. One was wrapped in a quilt, panting. The other was leaning against the headboard, smoking. Jiansheng surreptitiously sized up the man. The felt hypnotism was still brooding on his heart. The prerequisite to escape another's hypnosis was spiritual strength of equal or higher amount. Jiansheng was the only person to complete thousands of tasks under the Lord God. His soul power still had not yet reached the upper limit. It was obvious that his spiritual power and potential were terrifying. And this world was merely an E-class world. There was no supernatural powers, cultivation, magic, and other fantasy elements. In other words, a person with higher spiritual power than Zhou Yunsheng should not exist in this world. Yet, here was Cao Mukun. What were his origins? Was the missing energy from the Xinghai space more than half, in fact, related to him? Jiansheng frowned, then picked up a pillow to cover his head, blocking a giggle that was about to flow out. He'd guessed that he'd found out the cause. Similarities between people were inevitable, but resemblance after resemblance, time after time, was absolutely not a coincidence. Moreover, his body had long ago recognized the other man, even before his reason had. But because of fear of disappointment, he had refused to think too deeply about it. At first, he started a relationship with this man, merely to divert himself from loneliness. But after being followed through 3 lifetimes, he naturally had higher expectation for the situation. Restraining his joy, he shifted the pillow slightly to stare at the man through the gap. Cao Mukun was actually constantly paying attention to his reactions. Seeing him covering his face with a pillow, he thought that the cigarette smell was bothering him and quickly extinguished it. When he saw him secretly observing him, he couldn't help but smile, an indulgent smile, then immediately put on a cold face. He suddenly thought about it. The younger man was only a plaything he'd bought for 300,000, one that could sell anything for money, depraved, frivolous, and money-hungry, a plaything with no willpower. Why should he care about his feelings? He scolded himself, but he also couldn't help but be deeply attracted to the boy, his mood fluctuating and tangling. In order to struggle free from his nearly disoriented heart, he pretended to indifferently say, "Your performance in bed was pretty good. I'm very satisfied. Now that the deal has sealed, we need to establish a few rules." Jiansheng's joyful mood was distinguished by his words. Throwing open the pillow, he asked in disbelief, "You want to set rules for me?" "The people who follow me all have to observe the rules." Cao Mukun's tone was strict, but his heart was trembling. He suddenly felt very guilty about what he was doing. "The people who follow you? And how many people have you had so far?" Jiansheng questioned. Cao Mukun felt even guiltier, retorting, "Why do you care about that? What's your relationship with me?" "I'm your lover." This sentence was almost blurted out, but Jiansheng held back. He'd sensed that Cao Mukun's situation was completely different from his own. Every time he reincarnated, his data was formatted. In other words, he didn't have any memories from previous lives. But that was fine, as long as he still followed him from world to world. Thinking of this, Zhou Yunsheng's anger dissipated, dully asking, Fine, let's talk about your rules. Kalma-kun caressed the red marks on the younger man's neck, saying in a heavy voice, "The first rule, within the 3 months, you can't let Hanyu touch you. The second rule, come when I call, you can't avoid me without a reason." Zhu Sheng was ready to obediently listen. After not hearing him continue for a long time, he asked, "That's it? Did you think I'd give you house rules to memorize?" Kalmukun smirked. Jin Sheng nodded, then picked up his clothing thrown at the foot of the bed and pulled them on. Kalmukun frowned and asked, "What are you doing?" "I have to go home. If I don't, Hanyu will call to ask. I also have a rule. I hope you can comply. You can't let Hanyu know about the transaction between us." When he bent over to pull up his pants, Jun Cheng narrowed his eyes and sneered. "Just because you vomited, you thought you could settle accounts eventually? I'll make you suffer in the future." Sure enough, Kamakun felt very uncomfortable, itching to drag him back and mercilessly fuck him again. But he held back, irritably combing his hand through his hair as he ridiculed. "Isn't this unnecessary? Since his family is already bankrupt, why don't you break up with Hanyu? What can you gain by wasting your time with him?" "Because I love him, I'll never break up with him," Shuyun Sheng said while picking up his jacket and putting it on. "You love him? You show your love for him by climbing into my bed?" Kamakun's eyes were instantly bloodshot, his voice revealing a trace of furious malice. "Yes, because I love him, I'll sleep with you." Yun Cheng wore his shoes and walked towards the door. Then, as if remembering something, he turned back and asked, "Do you remember Yun Cheng?" Kamukun was still angry at his inexplicable answer. He stared blankly when he heard this name, but after thinking for a moment, he shook his head. "How about Wei Xian, Shen Yibin, Lu Shulang, Ning Xinyan, Zhu Zhaoting," the name of the crown prince? After asking several questions in a row, Cao Mukun's reaction was just shaking his head, baffled. Zhen Sheng had no choice but to press down his disappointment and hurriedly leave. After he left, Cao Mukun was still chewing on the name Zhen Sheng, his expression somewhat startled. Then he immediately felt a huge headache. He lit a cigar and forcefully inhaled a mouthful. From that day on, Kawa-kun picked up the younger man and brought him to his club for relief every week. The feeling of being with the younger man was too beautiful. There were many times when he was reluctant to withdraw from his body, just wanting to tear him apart and devour him. Gradually, meeting once a week was no longer able to satisfy him, so it changed to every 3 days, then again to 2 days, then every day, until finally he was itching to tie the boy to his side at all times. Today he was trying to invite the boy out for dinner, but dozen calls successively failed to connect. He restlessly waited for half an hour, but when he was about to send his assistant to locate him, the boy took the initiative to call him back. "What are you doing? Why didn't you answer the phone for so long?" Kamukun asked, exasperated. "The holiday is almost there. We have finals. I just finished an exam. My phone was on silent, so I didn't hear." The boy's clear voice instantly quenched Kamukun's anxiousness and anger. He pulled at his tie, slowly asking, "How was the test?" "It was good." Jun Cheng casually packed his backpack, his exquisite and immaculate profile reflecting the warm sun, making his beauty seem unreal. Not only was Ji Hanyu attracted, even Ji Hanyu's best friend Wang Ye was staring in awe, his heart unbearably itchy. On the other end, Kamukun said, "I'm adding a new rule. From now on, your phone has to be reachable at all times, and if there's a special circumstance that causes you to disconnect it, you must inform me first." Why don't you just install a tracking device on me? Zhu Sheng rolled his eyes, saying in his heart was this strong desire to control chronic illness impossible to change? There was also smoking. After several lifetimes of supervising, he still couldn't make the man quit. In the last life, the man was directly addicted to drugs. Could it be there were inherent traits locked into his database? Even after formatting, he couldn't be modified? Thinking of this, he gently laughed. Kamakun heard his laughter, and his heart almost melted into a puddle of water, saying softly, "That's a good idea. I'll buy you a tracking watch tomorrow, so I don't have to be afraid of losing you. I'll take you out to play during the holiday. Where do you want to go? Ask me after my grades come out." Julian Chang picked up his bag, beckoning to Jihan Yu as he walked out of the classroom first. "Okay, I'll come pick you up. Let's have dinner." Kamakun immediately picked up his car keys and headed down. Jian Cheng promised and hung up the phone, then sent Jihan Yu, who was following him behind, away. Jihan Yu's best friend, Wang Ji, frequently looked back at the teenager standing under the sunset, teasing, aren't you together with his best friend? Why not let him to us to play? Why not lend him to us to play? If you guys want to play, just go ahead. As long as you have enough money, he'll do anything for you. Jihan Yu laughed disdainfully. He's been ignoring us lately, very cold. Can't you help us invite him out? I can. If he takes the bait, don't forget to leave some evidence behind. Otherwise, if I suddenly dump him, Yudan will think I'm merciless and fickle. Because of him, Yudan has been feeling guilty recently, and has trouble eating and sleeping. My heart hurts when I see how much weight he lost. In short, the fault is not on me or Yudan. It's Lin Chengze who's willingly degrading himself. You understand? Understood. You're a really bad guy. Jian Yi has hastily nodded.